I'm going to be doing a short review on Unit 1, and this is to help you prepare for the test. And let me go through each chapter carefully, through each lab. So the first one that we are going to do is the introductory lab. Now here are some of the things that you need to be aware of and some things that you should really know. The first is, if you look up here, you're looking at anatomical position. So this is very important. So you must know the relative positions of different structures. For example, you could be asked to, for example, you could be asked, let's say that as an arrow pointing here, this is A, and there could be another one up here. So, and it could say, give the relationship of A to B. Now, when you write your answers, it's very important that you write and you notice that these are the limbs. So then in this case, you would say that A is proximal to B. A is superior to B is not a right answer because it's the limbs, and in the limbs you do not use superior and inferior. Instead, you use the terms and proximal and distal. So you could say A is proximal to B, or you could say B is distal to A. So, it's very important to do that. On the other hand, let's say you had the arrow pointing up here. So this point up here was A, and let's say another point up here is B. So in this case, of course, you would say A is medial to B or B is lateral to A. So, it's very important to know what is being asked. So sometimes some clues may be given in the question. So it's very important to be looking for these clues to see what is desired. So, sometimes it may be a proximal distal, sometimes it may be superficial, deep, anterior, posterior. So there are, things like that. So it's important to realize and look for what is being asked. Another example is, let's say we go to this section here. Now here you can see here, this is a transverse section. So in a transverse section, all you can see is in one plane. So you cannot say structures are superior or inferior. So for example, if you were asked what is the relationship of something here to something over here, and let's say this is B and this is A. So in this case, you can see that this is a transverse section. So you would say that A is anterior to B or B is posterior to A. So you see, you cannot say superior or inferior because this is everything is in one plane. So very important to, look at these and see what kind of section, and hence you'll be looking at, what your answer is going to be. Now, while we are doing sections, again, you should know you can get a question, you can get an image, and it can be asked in what plane has this section been taken. So, for example, in this over here, you can see this is a transverse plane. Since it is through the thorax, it can also be called a horizontal plane. Let's look at another one up here. So let's look at this image. So here you can see that if something is asked, over here on this side, you can see that this one is a sagittal section up here. This one is a coronal section. So, this is how you're going to be asked questions. You could get others on sections. So very important to be looking at these images to identify these sections. Look at this one here. This is a coronal section. You can see this is a coronal section. This here too is a coronal section. If you look here, you can compare. This one here is a coronal section, whereas this one here is a sagittal section. So very important to be able to distinguish between this. Then again, while we are looking at these sections, you notice you should know about serous membranes. Up here you can see this outermost layer here is the parietal layer, and then this inner one here is the visceral layer. And then you should be able to tell this visceral layer is that of the pleura. Up here, if you ask the same question, this is the pericardium. Here, this is the peritoneal visceral layer. Let's look at another image. So here in the thoracic cavity, again, you can see that the parietal pleura will be present over here, lining the inside wall of the thorax. The visceral pleura will be closely adherent to the lung up here. In the case of the pericardium, again, the visceral pericardium will be closely adherent to the heart, and the parietal layer will be here. So, this is how you're going to be looking at these serous membranes, and obviously you should know about their functions. So this is what is important in in the introductory lab. So you should know about this. Of course, you should know all about the other things that are mentioned in this lab, but these are some ideas that I'm giving you. If you look here, you should know all these regions. You should know at least one organ in all of these regions other than the small intestine, because that is present all over the body. Let's look at the cell. In the cell, important things that you must know. So we'll begin with this. So cell transport. So obviously you must know all about these different types of passive transport. You must know what is osmosis. You must know the relationship of solutes to osmosis and osmotic pressure. That is very important. So when you're doing osmosis, because when you did your lab quiz, you had osmotic pressure, so you must know the relationship of solutes to osmotic pressure. I would suggest that you all go back and look through all your quizzes, look at the right answers, look at the feedback if given, because your question in the test could be based on the feedback that is given. So it's very, very important to be looking at all of this. So this is something you must know. The next one, when you're looking at active transport, then here you must know all these different types of active transport. For example, here you have phagocytosis. So, if you're given an image of phagocytosis, you should be able to tell that phagocytosis is occurring, and you must know which cells are capable. And now that you have done the entire unit, you know that macrophages and neutrophils are the other kind which are responsible for phagocytosis. A good idea would be to go to this membrane transport, the movie, and then take a look at that. So you must know all of these different types of transport mechanism, so therefore go over your quizzes and take a look at that. The next thing is that you must know about mitosis. You must know about the cell organelles. So for the cell organelles, the most important perhaps diagram is this one. So up here, this is a very, very important diagram. You must know all of these cell organelles which are present here. You must know the functions of all of these cell organelles. You must be able to identify these, must know all these functions. Rough endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, the nucleolus, the nucleus. So, all of these, everything up here. So this diagram and the cell organelles and their functions, very, very important to know about these. So make sure that you know this. And then lastly, up here, mitosis. So you should know the different phases of mitosis. You should be able to recognize these different phases if you're given a diagram or you're given a model from your lab. If you remember, in the lab you were asked to go and look at the image database. So there again, make sure you go and look over them. There is a review quiz made by students which has been posted. Take a look at that. Those are always helpful. So again, these will help you identify the different phases. Remember, cytokinesis is involving cytoplasm, and the phases of mitosis are all of these. So again, you should be able to do that. So now we'll move on to histology, where the important things that you must know are epithelium, connective tissue, and then these are the two which are given in one of the videos, and the other video in the lab I use the integumentary system to look at epithelium and connective tissue again, but also to look at certain glands like the sebaceous and sweat glands, muscle, the erector pylori muscle, and certain special cells which are present in the epidermis. So you must view those two videos in the lab and look at all of that. And what you also must do, because every lab direction gives you, it asks you to look at the lecture notes. So make sure you go back and look at the tissues of the body, and you look at epithelium and connective tissue. So that's connective tissue. And here's epithelium. You must click on all the links that are given over here. For example, here showing you simple squamous epithelium. This is one of the images I use in the video itself, but there may be images which I do not use in the video, but again, you must know and be able to recognize them. So here's an image of cuboidal epithelium seen in the thyroid gland. So when you're looking at tissues, you must always know where it is found, what is its function, what are the identifying features, and some of that is given within the video and some of it you'll find in the notes. So always go back and do the labs, go through the links in the lab. So in this, tissues and integumentary, so make sure you've read all of this, and before the test, look at these two videos. So you look at this video and you'll also look at this one, and pay attention to that. I also ask you to look at these slides, so do that. You should have already looked at the links in the within the lecture notes. You must do that. See how I tell you to differentiate between the cuboidal epithelium, look at squamous epithelium. So you must pay attention to that, transitional, so all of that. And then when you look at let's say you're looking at this, for example, this is the integumentary system, where I use this system to show you all of the tissues in the body. So look at the epidermis. You must always, when asked to identify epithelium, be very, very specific. Do not just say stratified squamous epithelium. Always, if there is another part to it, stratified squamous keratinized epithelium or non-keratinized, depending on what it is. In the case of the skin, of course, it's keratinized epithelium. You must also be able to identify these cells, know their functions. And if you look at this, again, you can see stratified squamous keratinized. Here it's thin skin, so the keratin is less, this keratin is much more. Look at these granules, the melanin granules, and in this you can see there is dense, irregular connective tissue. And in another slide like here, you can see adipose tissue here. All of this is dense, irregular connective tissue. Look at these sebaceous glands. These are sweat glands and their ducts, the erector pylorus muscle. So all of this is really important for you to know. So make sure that you go back to the lab, go over some of these links, watch the videos again, and that's how you will do well in the test. And of course, last but not the least, go over your quizzes so that you know how to answer. The right answer in a quiz usually tells you this is the way to answer to a question, because remember, here you have to type out your answers.